LPT. On most graphing calculators you can archive a program or cheat sheet, and when your teacher erases the RAM before a test you can simply go into the archive that wasn't wiped and restore the cheat sheet. My app stats teacher specifically told us that they won't make us erase our calculators for the app test, so all of our settings for significant tests would stay the same. I went through and wrote a bunch of notes in it, worked like a charm, and passed with a 5. Please don't give me flashbacks to hypothesis testing, fuck that shit. Oh baby, let me strongly suggest that your null hypothesis is false. I can say with 95% confidence you should reject the null. Holy mother of god, you're triggering nightmares in me right now. They cap us at a T84 now. I used to program shorthand formulas into my T84 under programs. Also there is a periodic table for chemical exams that came in handy a ton. They provided the periodic table for every chemistry exam I've ever seen. There was one exam in one chemical course where they didn't provide the periodic table because they wanted you to memorize the molecular weights for about a dozen elements. It wasn't analytical because they used more precise MW than in most courses. It might have been phys chemical, but at that point, if you were reasonably good at chemistry you had probably memorized most of them anyway, because as it turns out H, O, C, N, Cl, etc. turn up very frequently in those kinds of courses. Basically the instructor wanted you to memorize a few values for the midterm, so that you didn't have to refer to your reference materials as often on the final, so that you could do the questions faster. We had a periodic table in the walls, 30 feet wide and 7 tall, on either wall of the lecture hall. I remember one midterm a kid said I didn't get a copy of the periodic table, and the tar just kinda lazily pointed at the wall, then went back to their task. Not allowed graphic calculators in a lot of exams now. At my school you only can't use graphing calculators in STEM classes. You know, like the only classes where you might need a graphing calculator kinda /s. Graphing Calc in Econ is really helpful, but it would have been way better in Calc or Ochem. Oh god, what I would have given for a graphing calculator in Econ. Literally only accounting classes at my College of Business check for graphing calculators. And in finance. Never had any other teacher care at all. I'm in calculus for differential equations, and I still can't use a graphing calculator. At that point you really don't need it. Edit, this is geared more for HS students, statistics, accounting, and others. My accounting, stats, and econ courses you aren't allowed a graphing calculator. Only a basic 4-function calculator. Literally had to go out and buy a T30 for all of those classes. Was a bit change from when I first went to college and you could use a T-82/83 in pretty much every class. That's how it was in my MBA program. The most they would ever let us use was a financial calculator, like the BAI. Even then some professors still made use just the 4-function. Deleted. This only works for calculators that do not have an exam mode, and there aren't many calculators that are allowed in university exams that do not need an exam mode. I did 4 years of university with a TeenSpire, and never once was I told I couldn't use it. I never had to go into exam mode either. I use the shit out of my note sheets on there. Any sufficiently clever future software engineer should be able to fake any exam mode the manufacturer has come up with. At that point you're probably smart enough to pass either way. Copy and pasting someone else's code doesn't require any intelligence whatsoever. My college Preckle professor used to be an engineer. He lets us use our textbook, notes, graphing calculator, etc. on our exams because in the real world, no one gives a shit if you don't have the steps to graph polynomials memorized. You just need to know how to apply them correctly. Here's a wonderful man. This should be how every test is administered. I always thought it was mad in software engineering you had to write code. As a software engineer now I still can't write code without help of the editor to make sure it doesn't compile. The only time I actually need to remember how to code by hand is interviews, and even that is borderline useless. I always just had to calculators and switch them out secretly after the check. Look at Mr. Moneybags over here with his two calculators. I mean, usually it's a joke, but them calculators were expensive as hell. That's why you steal the unattended ones in the library as backups. This is the real LPT. My physics teacher asked to borrow my graphing calculator to use on the overhead projector / camera thing to show the class how he's going to wipe our calculators before the test if we choose to use them. I told him I had a lot of programs downloaded on it and a number of programs I hadn't backed up, and he promised it was just a demonstration and he wouldn't delete anything. He pressed OK instead of cancel. I lost dozens of hours of work on choose your own adventure games and lots of other ones I'd made. I had just gotten one that refreshed a couple of times a second and had movement and collision detection to work and was working out shooting. It really disheartened me and I lost interest in programming. When the going gets tough. I programmed all the equations for calculus into my personal calculator for college. I was called out by a student during an exam. The professor came over and asked me about it, then told the other student, if you take the time to learn the equations well enough to make your own programs out of them, then it sounds like you know them enough for my tests. I then worked with her to build all my programs for that class in after hours. Best teacher I've ever had. I'd be like, this kid was trying to copy my answers by staring at my calculator while I worked. Apostrophe. My math classes just didn't allow graphic calculates for exams. Basic scientific calculator only. When I was in college I did everything I could do to resist the tea monopoly on calculators. I was poor, so I bought an HP graphing calculator at 1/3 of the price of a T. I believe it was around $50 that had a better UI to boot. My teachers knew nothing about it, but allowed me to use it. Later on I found out it was fully programmable and could even differentiate. Certain T calculators were banned but not mine. Even thought it had the same or better features. I always had to show my work on exams of course, but running my programs just to check my work was a lifesaver when I caught mistakes I had made. Also, screw T and their monopoly on calculators. Shameless plug for KCO2, their cheapest $50 graphing model overclocks like a beast. My high school math teacher never manually cleared the RAM himself. We just had to show him the RAM cleared screen. So it was a very simple matter to create a fake screen to display without clearing the RAM. Wasn't actually using it to cheat. I just didn't want to delete all my games. Glad to hear I wasn't the only one doing this. LPT, never ever clear your calculator, except for specific state tests or required by your teacher. The SAT and AP tests do not require you to clear your calculator before taking the test. My math teacher, who is fed up with everyone clearing their calculator and losing all the settings they meticulously set. Honestly, this is dumb as shit. In the professional world, if you don't remember a specific formula or principle, you Google it and move on with your day. Why are we structuring education in a way that is so different from how to succeed professionally? Because in the professional world you are a professional and you're not learning basic material to understand a field of knowledge. Classes are to learn and understand stuff, not how to parrot what Google says. Except 90% of classes don't teach you how things work, just that they do. Most of class is wasted doing repetitive examples and students are expected to learn on their own why things are the way they are. It should be the other way. Teach them how and why, then they can do examples. I'd kill for examples in one of my classes this semester. Instead we get the history of what we are supposed to just read about in our books. Wow, calculators must be getting really advanced these days, lol. No, they've been the same now, at least the standard 83/84 series. Basically 90s tech, and still full price. It's stupid. I can buy an Android phone for that price, and it can do everything a T calculator can do, but better. Same reason people pay full textbook price for a new edition of a book that's had less than a paragraph of changes made in the past decade. Unethical, more like how I got through college. I'd put an entire book in that fucker. Second, memory, 712. My math teacher taught us this. That's one cool ass teacher. Has cooler shit. And has a really good teacher too. Those don't come very easily. I had a T93 plus and I could indeed do that. They cleared the memory, but I could retrieve a backup of my installed games. And my own fake program with formulas and whatnot written in. Current students, can y'all still find and replace all the periods with periods of a slightly larger font size to help increase the length of your paper, or do they now actively look for that? Sorry for not staying on topic. I've never been caught on it. I had one exam where it was open source, Google, formula sheet, etc. But most of the class still failed. I use a mechanical pencil to write equations and such very small on my fingernails. What did you write? Y equals mx plus b. On the T84 calculator under the program function you can write notes using the letters on the calculator. Normally the program will ask for the A, B, C inputs but instead select edit on the program and you have access to all the notes you typed out. Yep, for the non-programmers among us. I did that just last week in my college algebra class. Have two identical calculators. After teacher wiped everything on the first one. Just swap it with the programmed one in a second. My college doesn't allow any calculators on tests anymore for this reason. Da fuck do you do for maths like trig? Bring out the giant textbook full of conversions from the 60s? What program are you in that allows calculators on exams? I'm well out of math myself, but I helped a classmate program her calculator this way for a calculus 2 exam today. Edit, college senior. What are you doing in Calc 2 that you want a calculator for? My Calc 2 was just deriving expansions and solving integrals analytically. Not my class. I think she was trying to keep a cheat sheet rather than use the calculator. Okay, I could see coding in some functions and definitions. For my accounting exams they make us use the most bare bones calculator ever. It can do the 4 basic operations and that's it. It's all you really need. And how do you do that? Tutorial. Your teachers are erasing RAM. The calculator's RAM. That's where most calculators store temporary programs and functions. I know what RAM is. I've never had a teacher have me erase it. Some teachers and professors have a little stick that they plug into a calculator to erase all that stuff beforehand. Typically college level. And some SAT/ACT places that don't ban graphing calculators outright. Weird. Never encountered that. My greatest accomplishment in high school was sketching an image of the memory erased screen so when they teachers walked around, I just brought up the image so it looked like I cleared my memory. Hey, thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe.